Yo, what's going on guys? So in this video I want to go over weapon choices, and although every gun is capable of low time to kill if you land your shots, some are just easier to fire accurately and will give you an edge in those combat situations. Now I'm mostly going to be covering assault rifles, but I will throw in some SMGs because I think they can be used in endgame in the right circumstances. So let's go over the ARs that we have at our disposal in the 1.0 update and compare them to their real life counterparts. We have the M416, which is a 416 made by Heckler & Koch. We have the SCARL, which is made by the Belgium company FN Herstal. We have the infamous AKM, which is an AK-47 made by the Russian Mikhail Kalashnikov. We have the M16A4 made by Colt, and then we have two crate rifles, the Augh made by Steyr, and the Groza, which is called the OTS-14 Groza and made by a company in Russia, T-Skib Su. Now, given PUBG attempts to emulate realism in the mechanics compared to other games, they will do their best to be accurate with the weapon's characteristics, and I have noticed that since the 1.0 update. Starting off with the M4, which I want to place in first place, it does belong in the top of the list. It seems to be what most good players are gravitating towards. It seems like it's the meta, and hands down from what I've noticed is the best assault rifle you can get your hands on outside of a crate. And I still think it can give the Augh a run for its money. It fires a 5.56mm round at a very high fire rate at around 850 RPMs. It outputs very high DPS. It has a high bullet velocity, accuracy, and when fully attached has barely any recoil on full auto. It can utilize all the scopes and is great at pretty much all ranges, but it really shines up close as it can take the place of even some SMGs as it's a carbine rifle. This is the only assault rifle you can put a tactical stock on, which helps tremendously, and like I said, when fully kitted, this thing is a freaking laser. Now with an angled grip, it basically has no horizontal recoil or vertical recoil, and if it does, you pull the mouse down a little bit and it compensates for it. Now if you see one, I suggest grabbing it. The Germans have mastered and made one of the best M4/AR-15 platforms you can get your hands on. Next we'll talk about the SCARL, coming in behind the M4 but still a great rifle to pick up. Although it does have a lower fire rate and a lower DPS, it is very accurate and easy to shoot. Some people prefer the sound and the feel over the M4. I do admit I like the sound. Now some people will argue that the SCAR is better than the M4 in every aspect. I disagree, and there's been plenty of tests that show otherwise. It's a great gun at medium range engagements and pretty good up close, but due to the slower fire rate, it just won't compete with a fully kitted M4 up close. Also having that slightly lower bullet velocity, it's a bit harder to hit moving targets, and having more horizontal and vertical recoil, it will come in second. But it's still a great gun, although the iron sights are terrible if you end up picking one up in the beginning of the game. Moving on, and the next one is really kind of a toss-up. It's hard to say which one is better, as they both have their moments and they're both pretty situational. But I will say the AK has more options and can fire a larger round, so I'll give it the third spot today. Now the AKM has a ton of recoil, not only vertically but horizontally, and the recoil is random. So I don't advise shooting the gun more than 4 to 5 shot bursts at a time, unless you're super close where it can just really inflict some damage. I see plenty of people running this weapon on full auto for its close range armor destruction, and although it's only a 600 RPM gun, the round makes up for it. With a comp, it is better, but still not very controllable. It does have the option to put on any scope though, but I wouldn't fire at long ranges as it's not very accurate and the bullet velocity is difficult to get a feel of. It's also got a lot of kick and the reset on the scope can take a while. But it can fire full auto and it's great at ripping up vehicles as well, so I often find myself carrying one of these around for certain situations. They're very common as well, and the ammo is easy to find. I like the AK, but it can be quite inconsistent. Still, it's an assault rifle though, so there's that, right? Next up we have the M16A4, which was recently nerfed pretty hard. It cannot use a sight higher than a 4x and has noticeably more recoil. It fires a 5.56 round and has semi and burst mode. Now the burst mode is no joke and it can rip people up close, but it's very hard to control without a compensator, and the pause in between the bursts can get your ass killed. Now it's accurate and somewhat easy to shoot. but now it's so limited and I really only use it for mid-range engagements, unless I have no other option. It's another common weapon you'll find all over the place, and it's still better than running around with something like a micro Uzi in the endgame, especially on Miramar. So don't pass it up. The last two are crate weapons and they're both amazing. If you can get one, grab it. Now if you're not very comfortable, I don't know, I would think twice, because the M4 is a great gun if you got one of them. I don't know about swapping one out. It's really up to you. If you've used the Groza a lot, then go for it. But again, think about it. The Groza fires a 7.62mm at a moderately high fire rate of 750. Compared to its other 7.62 counterpart, the AK at 600, it completely destroys people up close. It does have a ton of recoil though, but it's similar to an SMG. It's got that bullpup design and it's a short barrel, so I find it a situational gun, and not many weapons can compete up close. It just devastates. Now the Augh is another great gun. It's very similar to the M4 though, but it feels a little more snappy and feels more like an SMG. It's got slightly less recoil as well, and the Augh can shine in pretty much any situation. Very accurate, high fire rate, you really can't go wrong. I really wish they would put it out in the world though, as it's nothing really special. Does it really belong in a crate? Come on, Blue Hole. Now I would say that if you don't have an AR, you can pick up some SMGs that are pretty decent. A UMP is probably the first choice. It's a great close range weapon and somewhat mid-range option, but it being a 9mm, it can really be a letdown on armored targets. Same with the Vector, which can melt an enemy up close, and when fully kitted, it's a laser. Its ammo though, it's got a hard time taking down those heavily armored opponents. If they got level 2 and above, you're in trouble. So I advise grabbing an AR, pretty much any one you can. And that about wraps it up. And since we don't have any data mine info from the 1.0 update and the differences of the guns, I'm pretty much going off of what I've experienced so far and what I find the most effective, and also what I've noticed the best players utilizing. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Now ass shit, go out there and bring home that chicken dinner.